I recently bought the Elgato Prompter and it has been such an awesome tool that it prompted me to make this video. Honestly, the last time I added something this game-changing to my setup was probably the ATEM Mini several years ago. And that's because the ATEM took multi-input video switching, something that had always been expensive and confusing, and made it simple and affordable. The Elgato Prompter does that exact same thing. Traditionally, teleprompters have always been either expensive or clunky and confusing, and in a lot of cases, all of those things all at once. But now for under $300, you get an awesome tool that actually works. And this video is not sponsored. It is going to sound like it's sponsored because I'm gonna say so many nice things about this prompter. It is not. I bought this as soon as they announced it because I was super excited about it, and then I've had it for a while now, and I've been using it a lot, and I've been loving it a lot. But before diving into the specifics of this prompter, I should promptly explain what the point of even having a teleprompter is in the first place. First and foremost, prompters are obviously great for reading scripts, whether it's word for word or just a list of bullet points that you cycle through. And let me tell you, after using this for a while, since I'm holding it right now, I'm not using it right now, and I really miss it. Not because I do everything word for word scripts, but just having bullet points to keep me on track and to keep videos relatively not insanely long. This has been a really wonderful tool that I wish I could be using right now. But beyond scripts and outlines, prompters are useful for so many other things, especially in today's world where video conferencing and remote work are becoming more and more popular. Being able to put a video call on the prompter screen and then look directly at the person that you're on the call with is really amazing. And I didn't realize how much I was missing over all these years by having the person slightly off to the side of my camera. Over time, I've trained myself to always look at the camera's lens, but that means when I'm on a video call, I'm never really looking at the person because I feel disconnected when it's just me looking off to the side of the screen. So I'm always looking here at the lens, kind of missing out on the call. Using the prompter and being able to actually stare at a person or people when I'm talking to them has really totally changed how I feel about remote work and video conferencing and video calls. And beyond that, a prompter is also a great tool to have while you're recording because it can be used as a reference monitor to make sure your framing and your focus are good, to make sure you're actually recording so you don't do that thing where you press the button to stop recording and then the camera starts recording because it wasn't recording the whole time. That's never fun. So just being able to see that everything is up and running properly while recording has been awesome peace of mind that the prompter has also brought to my setup. And from there are a million other uses for prompters. So suffice it to say, if you're somebody who produces a lot of videos, spends a lot of time in virtual meetings, or does any sort of online teaching and presenting, a prompter will really make your life so much easier. But up until now, I've been pretty hesitant to talk too much about teleprompters because they're just kind of a nightmare to deal with usually. I've used all kinds of teleprompters over the years, from my first job working at a local TV station back in 2001 to setting up different broadcast studios at different schools and building my own home setup. And let me tell you, even the best prompters up to this point are always pretty much kind of a pain to use. Prior to this video, I made a video several years ago about a glide gear prompter that's basically just a big hunk of metal and glass that you put a smartphone or a tablet or another display in. And that is what I had been using in my home setup, well, really up until now. But even that became impractical to use all the time because of its size and the fact that you had to wrangle in figuring out a screen and software. And because you're looking into a mirrored surface, you have to figure out a way to mirror the image on the display so that way everything's not just backwards when you're looking at it. And that is not something that has traditionally been very easy to do. And so it just means that I don't find myself using the teleprompter, an incredibly useful tool, as often as I'd like to. And because of all that, that's why I think that the Elgato Prompter is genuinely a groundbreaking tool for anybody who does this sort of thing. Not only is it affordable, but it solves literally all of those prompter problems. Promptblums? First off, its physical design is small and lightweight, and it can accommodate virtually any camera because it comes with basically everything you need to adapt pretty much any camera, all the way from a little webcam up to a full-on cinema camera to the Elgato Prompter. If you have the Elgato Facecam, of course, it comes with a Facecam plate that goes right on the back of the prompter, and then you're all set there. But if you're using a more traditional camera that you just want to put up to the back of the prompter, you have this sort of universal lens plate, which then has a shroud to prevent light from reaching the camera, keeps it shrouded in secrecy. But then you also get this booklet of step-up rings for pretty much every lens diameter. And so what this does is, for example, this is a 67 millimeter. I can put this on this lens. And now I just put this plate on the back of the prompter, and then the prompter just goes right on the camera's lens like that. And lens me tell you, I was really nervous about this because having a big thing hanging off the front of my camera seems weird and kind of risky. But I've been using this since the prompter's release with no issues. Now, of course, it might depend on your lens and your camera, but for my Sony mirrorless cameras with all my E-mount lenses, it's had no problem, putting any undue pressure on the lens or the mount. I mean, it's light enough I can just walk around like this with a prompter, which would be ridiculous. And if I don't want to have it hang off the camera, it does come with this back plate here that screws into the prompter like so. And then you have this platform here that you can raise and lower, and you would mount your camera just on the platform and then have it peek through the prompter. And then down here on the bottom, you have 2 1/4-20 mounts, one on the display itself and one sort of on this other platform here. And that's what you can mount to your tripod. So in that case, the prompter mounts to your tripod, and then your camera just sits on this platform right here behind it. And you do have these 2 accessory shoes up here. They're pretty lightweight and plasticky, but they could be good for mounting small lights, maybe a small other monitor if you needed another monitor or something. It's nice to have them. I'm glad they're there. So this display, which then just becomes another external display for your computer that you can drag things to and from. I don't think the resolution is even 4K, but I was honestly surprised at how good it looks. And straight out of the box, the display is reversed. So that means as soon as you start looking at things in this mirrored section, everything is correct. If I put some text up on screen, you can see on the display itself, the text is backwards, but if you look through the mirrored part here, you can see that it actually is correct and easy to read. And you don't have to do anything to make that happen. That's just how the prompter works straight out of the box. I've heard some people say that they wish the display was bigger, which could be cool, especially if you use this mostly as a monitor or for video calls. But I honestly think that this is kind of the perfect size because the prompter is not designed to be in a studio 15 feet away from you. It's designed to be relatively close, which means this is big enough to be usable, but it's small enough to easily fit in your setup, hopefully without you having to move and change a whole bunch of different stuff. Plus, having a slightly smaller display on a prompter can oftentimes be helpful because if this screen were huge and I was reading a script, it'd be much easier to see my eyes going back and forth across the display. Whereas this is just the right size, and of course you can adjust the margins and everything to reduce your margin of error, but it's just the right size where even if I'm looking left to right or looking anywhere on the display, you can't really notice my eyes moving pretty much at all. Now, of course, reading from a prompter is a skill that you need to practice to look natural, but it's not too terribly difficult to do. And as I've been editing videos that I've made with the prompter, while I'm editing them, I totally forgot that I was even using it. Like it is that unnoticeable that even I didn't notice it, and I was the one who did it. And another huge benefit of this little prompter is that setup is super simple. As you might have noticed, it's just one cable. It comes with a super high speed 5 gigabytes per second, a super high speed USB-C to USB-A cable. There's no separate power, there's no separate display thing. It's just one cable for both power and data information display. And this is something else really cool. This does not count technically as another external display on your computer. This uses something called display link, which I don't fully understand, so I'm just going to say that it is magic. And what that means is that somehow it is being run into your computer differently than a typical external display. So if you're working with a computer that has a limited number of external displays that it can support, or you've already maxed out your number of external displays, you can still use the prompter because it's not going to count as an external display. But it works just the same as one. You can drag stuff to it, you can play back video on it, there's no lag, no weird latency issues or anything like that. It works exactly the same as a native display. But again, it's just magic. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle that helps this prompter solve all those problems, that's a lot of alliteration, is the software. If you've ever used a Stream Deck or pretty much any Elgato thing, you know that they're really good at making stuff simple, even complicated things simple. And the Camera Hub software is exactly that. It's super easy to understand. You can even adjust your camera settings there, and that's also what you can open up to then dive into the prompter specific settings. But you don't even have to have that open when you're using the prompter, because you can, if you want, just drag things right to the display just like you would with any other display. I really like the software though, because it is super simple and pretty powerful, and it lets you use the prompter either for scripts, as a confidence monitor, or as a really cool combination of the two, where you can see your script over like your monitor of yourself, so you can kind of see both things at once. Or if you're doing a live stream, you can put your chat over the image of the live stream. It's a ton of flexibility. I haven't seen that functionality ever before, so it is really cool. Now, I've been using the Elgato Prompter with my Sony FX3, and that has been great because of the way I have my camera mounted on a big tripod head with also my microphone boom arm coming out of the side. The prompter did not fit when I tried to put it like this because my mic boom arm was getting in the way. I have a very strange setup though, so I don't think that'll be a problem on most other setups if you don't want to hang the prompter off the lens of your camera and you want to mount the camera to the back of it. But I've had no issues just putting this right on the lens of my camera. Here, we can even see, like right now it's not there. And now the prompter is on my camera. That is how quick it is to install and remove the prompter. And if I want to take it off, I just reach over here and take it off. This setup has worked great, especially because I do take this camera off the tripod a lot. So it's been pretty easy. Just pop the prompter off, pop the camera off, and I'm good to go. Now, yet another thing that is really cool about this prompter is, while you can control it with a mouse and keyboard, even just using your script, you can just scroll your mouse through the script. You can also then control it with something like an Elgato Stream Deck, or what's extremely cool is the Elgato pedal. This is one of my favorite, like, underrated things. This pedal is amazing. So what I've been doing since the Elgato pedal is basically just a 3-button Stream Deck. When I have a script up on the prompter, just to keep myself in the zone so I'm not reaching around and sort of getting distracted a lot, I have the middle button of the pedal set to start and stop playback of the script if I wanted the script to just keep rolling. And of course you can adjust the speed on that as well. And then I have the left and right button set to just move the script up and down. And so a lot of times I just sort of put some text on screen, go through those bullet points, and then I just stomp the pedal to move it to the next section of bullet points, go through those bullet points, and so on and so forth. But being able to control the prompter with the pedal at my feet, normally in like a TV station, you would have to have the prompter and then a separate person. That used to be my job when I was an intern, was to control the prompter, or you have to deal with this janky software that sometimes just doesn't work or doesn't go at the right speed or fumble with another controller or something. And this is just hands-free. I can do everything just with my feet and control my script. And it is a feat of prompting technology. So all that being said, are there any cons to the prompter? Is there anything that I don't like about the prompter? Honestly, not really. I can't think of any cons. Compared to honestly every other prompter I've ever used, this one is basically perfect. There are definitely a few areas where the software could be improved, like more robust script editing so you can do multiple scripts at once a little more easily. Or I would love the ability to easily adjust the screen's color temperature. I tried calibrating the screen and it was a little funky. And so the color temperature of this display, I know it's not a color accurate reference monitor, but it doesn't exactly match my other one, which throws my eyes off just a little bit. So just having a little slider to make it, a little warmer or a little cooler would be a little cooler. My other software gripe, if you could call it that, which again, this is version 1.0 of this software, is sometimes it can be a little funky if you like unplug the prompter and plug it back in. Sometimes then the software won't control the prompter. I have found that in those cases, if I just unplug the prompter, close the software, plug the prompter back in, open the software, then everything works again. So it gets a little weird if you're like disconnecting it in the middle, but that's a pretty minor issue overall. The glass of the prompter doesn't really affect image quality or clarity, but as you can kind of see here, it does sort of make things slightly darker. It messes with the exposure just a little bit. If you look right here, it's nothing too crazy, and this room is also very, very bright. And that's an easy thing to fix either in your camera settings or in your editing software, or even in your Elgato Camera Hub app or something like Ecamm or OBS. There's like a million ways to solve that problem. So a slightly darker image, not really an issue. Fortunately, it doesn't have any effect on clarity or sharpness or any of those other really important things that you don't want to mess with when it comes to your camera's image quality. Now, the biggest potential issue, I think, is glare from the screen, because the screen is so bright. If you have it at like full brightness on something that has a light background, you can sometimes notice a little bit of haze or glare. It's almost like it's the reflection of the screen on the mirror sort of, you can kind of tell and you can kind of see that in the camera's image. This is not really, I don't think, a defect of the prompter. I would rather have a screen that is too bright that I need to turn down rather than a screen that is too dim and that's what I have to live with. I think the easiest way around that is to just make sure that your screen isn't crazy bright and make sure that you're using a dark background because that eliminates the problem totally. It's really only super bright white background. Then you might have a little bit of problem with sort of haze and glare. Otherwise, just stick to a dark background and you're good to go. That glare issue is something that can happen with any prompter, so it's just something to be aware of. It's not a defect or an issue with this prompter. It's just, that's it. That's being super nitpicky. Those are the bad things I have found about the prompter. Ultimately, my gauge when it comes to things like this is how easy they are to recommend. Sometimes a thing can be great, but it requires a lot of extra accessories or fiddling in order to make it work right, and that can be tough to recommend because I feel like I'm just giving someone a chore. I'm saying, yeah, this thing is great, and then they get it, and then they just have to keep troubleshooting before they can actually use the thing. The Elgato Prompter is literally plug and play. You spend a few minutes poking around in the software, and then you're good to go. You don't need to buy any other accessories or download a whole bunch of different software, just the one little Camera Hub app, and the prompter is awesome right from the start. And speaking of things that are awesome from the start, thank you to everyone who helps support my channel through Patreon and YouTube channel memberships.